One West. One West.
One West doctrine.
One West.
Yes. But when they say One West camps, they mean all of us that come from under that banner.
Because IUIC is an Israelite group, some will think of them as simply, quote, the Israelites, end quote, or, quote, the Hebrew Israelites, or, quote, unquote, the BHIs, etc. With that in mind, it should be pointed out that the many Israelite groups which currently exist, as well as the ones that have existed in the past, run across a very diverse spectrum. IUIC comes out of a specific stream within that spectrum, and it's a stream that's popularly known as the One West groups, or One West descended groups, or sometimes just One Westers. This refers to all those splinter groups which descend from the old Israeli Church of Universal Practical Knowledge, which was originally based at 1 West 125th Street in Harlem.
Myself, I would camp like Israel United in Christ, ISUPK, House of David, even GOCC, right? That's all I can think of. You know, all them camps that come under, even GMS, but all of us was all the leaders, every single one of us, we was originally part of One West in Harlem, 1 West 125th Street. But when the split happened and the leadership broke up, we had to decide which leaders to go with.
All these groups descend from the ICUPK, that's the Israeli Church of Universal Practical Knowledge, which, by the way, relevant to this, had previously called itself the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, or ISUPK, but whatever the case, it became ICUPK, Israeli Church of Universal Practical Knowledge. The most famous split happened when Masha, who had been declared King David by the ICUPK, broke away, at which point the House of David group was formed. While the House of David group went through its own ups and downs, the ICUPK changed its name to the ICGJC, the Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ. Meanwhile, the House of David splintered into several groups. For example, the Bridgeport camp of the House of David evolved into the now infamous group known as GMS, or Great Millstone.
Years ago, we called them missions. Like if somebody messed with a brother, we would call the whole school, all the camps. We were big back then. So you might have like 1,000 dudes, and we were much.
Which is a name they took on when people began to popularly refer to them by the name of their first YouTube account. So too, another splinter group which came out of the House of David was IUIC, Israel United in Christ, which is the group which organized the march in Memphis. Meanwhile, the ICGJC underwent its own splits. For example, a few men broke away and formed Light and Body Church. Aside from them, Yohana and men loyal to him also broke off from the ICGJC and started a new group which took on the old name of the parent group of all the splinter groups, ISUPK, or Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, here designated as the new ISUPK. The distinction has relevance as the new ISUPK posits that they are the original group, which is disputed by other splinter groups.
Serpent, you ain't the original school, you just a refurbished version.
Light and Body Church underwent its own split when RAWCHAA broke away and formed the GOCC, the Gathering of Christ Church. We should take a moment to quickly review some of the most relevant splinter groups and the history which gave rise to them. This will admittedly not be any sort of an exhaustive list of One West descended groups. Rather, it's only going to discuss some of the groups which are mentioned in this video.
I want to give all the praises and the honor to Yahawah, BaHa, YAHAWASHI, BaHa, RAWCHAA, QADASH, and double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone. Honors as well to you, brethren, you fellow believers and followers of this faith, and shalom to the elect. So anyway, this video came off of a re-upload on Vocab Malone's channel, and I think this is the whole talk about One West. Now they're talking about Elder Aria again, but it's always One West. Well, when you go into history, there was always splits, reformations, right? So this is like nothing new, but what they're presenting it to you to be as though it's something, some occultic practice that just popped up from Frank Cherry, who had a dream, which we have no history too much on Frank Cherry except him knowing he was an Israelite, and a so-called black Jewish scholar is the one that came out and said he believed that during the Civil War. So it's easy to see how him and William S. Crowley, it's easy, doing the research, it's easy to see how you can, why it's called his story and not true history, right? So anyway, the one thing I noticed that on the video that they did have right was ISUPK, or let's say the narrator was talking about it, and how they claim that they're the original, and it's impossible for them to be the original because General Yohana broke off. It's kind of like those tasty cakes. Years ago in my day, they had a different taste back in the day. Today, they don't taste so well, you know. Blame it on taste changing or whatever, but the food has definitely changed. What happens is companies buy them out, and they'll keep the name, but they'll be more artificial. And this is what I see ISUPK to be, right? But at the end of the day, you know, there's always been reformations, right? This is what Paul was dealing with, right? YAHAWASHI even, okay? When he came on the scene, you know, he came to set up to reform the truth, right? Let's look up reform. You had, I can't remember his name, the Pharisee who believed, Nicodemus, right? It says reformation, reestablishment, improvement, and alteration for the better. Okay. Now, when you look at the Christian church, they have many reformations, right? I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I'm going to go into a little bit of history on it and where it comes from and the design of it, okay? So let's go to Ecclesiastes 1:9. This is another version, the BSB version. It says here, what has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there a case where one can say, look, this is new? It has already existed in the ages before us, right? So I just wanted to bring that part out. So anyway, when we go to the Reformation, right, because this is all the splits in what this is all about. Even Vocab's guy, John Calvin, the Protestant, I believe. There's so much information on him, how he, you know, he tortured people for not calling them a heretic or whatever. But anyway, the Reformation is named, I believe it comes from the Roman Catholic Church, which what they call one Westers Christianity is Roman Catholicism. Okay, the Reformation, like they call one Westernism, you have Roman Catholicism. So any of you people who follow in Christianity and have a problem with a split, it's kind of amazing how they know everything about in detail about this doctrine or how it started. Like that's going to change what the Most High is going to set up. It's not going to change anything. The ones who are going to wake up is going to wake up. The Reformation, named the Protestant Reformation of the European Reformation, was a major movement within Western Christianity in the 16th century Europe that posed the religious and political challenges to the Roman Catholic Church, to the Catholic Church, and in particular to the papal authority, arising from what were perceived to be errors, abuses, and discrepancies, which we know what goes, speaking of abuses, we know what go on in the Roman Catholic Church. And these same things happen in all these churches, all these denominations, because it comes out of that wicked root. It says by the Catholic Church, the Reformation was the star Protestantism and the split of the Western Church into Protestantism and what is now the Roman Catholic Church. So you had the Catholic Church, now it's the Roman Catholic Church. it also considered to be one of the events that is significant in the end of the Middle Ages, right, and the beginning of the early modern period in Europe. Now, you had our people who also had Israelites who also had a form of a reformation in the councils, right? And then you would have what they would call the Roman Catholics, right? Because we were there. Okay, so I don't want to read too much on that, but it says, prior to Martin Luther and other Protestant reformers, there were earlier reform movements within Western Christianity, although the Reformation is usually considered to have started with the publications of 95 Theses by Martin Luther in 1517. So you got to understand, this book is so powerful, this Bible, that everyone that came into power with the Bible decided to make a reformation and make a change, because everybody's seeking for the truth. So this is what you have here in 1 West, right? This is what you have going back to the, you had the commandment keepers, or whatever you call them, Abba Bivens, King Mashal, and others. I don't know all of them. Elder Ariah, I never met him. I'm just going through a little bit of what history was told to me that I know. Okay, so when you had the split, this was coming of another form of a reformation. And then everybody would go and teach the doctrine to the best of their ability. So to spark up and say, well, 1 West is this is different, you have splinter groups. Well, the Baptist church is a splinter group, right? The other churches that you see are splinter groups out of the Roman Catholic Church. And it's crazy that they got Roman Catholic churches in the hood and people aren't even Roman Catholic, the average Jake. But they all consider it Christianity. And, you know, here's a big issue, the reason why I'm comparing the two. Because when you have the Hebrew Israelite so-called movement, and then one of the Israelites out of one of the churches commit a heinous or wicked act, so they say, they tend to blame the whole Israelite community on it. But when a white Christian, right, which Kanye had said that about the you-know-who's, small hat cheap suits. So when it comes to a Christian who commits a singular crime amongst his own, like a Dylan Roof who goes up in a black church and he was brought up under the Christian faith, it was all of a sudden an isolated incident. It had nothing to do with Christianity at all. Now they would say, because the way we teach and we're hardcore, because YAHAWASHI, Luke 19 said he was austere, right? This is the way we teach. But you can't blame the whole Israelite so-called community on the deeds of one man that left the group or did something wicked. But for whatever reason, Christianity was bred and based off of murder, violence, and deception, right? But for whatever reason, all these Christians committing suicide, killing themselves, going up and shooting one another, these Christian jakes that go to church on Sunday, go back out in the streets, sell drugs. Yeah, they do that too. All the adultery that's going on in there. They all try to isolate the incidents. That's how you know it's wicked, and that's how you know they try to keep it going. Let me look at this here. This is called Christian Denominations. It says, it comes from, I think they said 7 branches. Let me see. 6 branches. It says 6 branches of the Christians. Adventists, Baptists, Congregationalists, Lutherans, Methodists, Presbyterians, or Pentecostals, and Presbyterians. And it shows the design of the churches split from one another. So you had out of the Roman Catholic Church, you had a split of the Eastern Orthodox, which they would call an Oriental One says Oriental, one says Eastern, still similar, but they have differences. Angelicalism, Protestantism, and all these people had a hand in the hardcore slavery, man. And they all believe that we were Canaanite, Africans, Hamites, and we were supposed to be brought in slavery to serve them. That was the mindset of Christianity, and the conversion that came with it, because they had a book called How to Convert a Negro. The conversion that came with it was you had a split even with slaves, where some they wanted to convert, others they didn't want to convert. They figured that the ones that they wanted to convert, that made better slaves because they were more docile, right, and more understanding because of using religion. And then you had the others that felt that they were just supposed to be slaves and they don't deserve a hand at salvation. So you had a split even on either side of the coin of Protestants and evangelicals. And when they had those churches go up, this is where you would see the KKK would bomb the church. But you had so-called white people help these blacks, so-called black people, Israelites will say that, help build these churches, fund them and build them, because they wanted to reform so-called black people. That's what the HBCU was all about. The black colleges, I guess it's HBCU, the so-called black colleges, universities, that was all for replacement theology or reformation. And they all started with a form of Christianity, by the way, under the Quakers, the so-called abolitionists. That's another video. But we see here, it's a whole bunch of different branches, 1654, and even out of, like I said, Israelites, right? It was even us. So what you see here in One West is probably something that happened many years ago out of us doing the same thing. And we have different, you know, you are who you are. You're going to come back as you are and who you are in the same lot that you was in. Let's go to denominations. Okay, I guess we're in denominations. Reformations. Okay, I'm not going to read all this, but it just shows the reformations. The Protestant Reformation was a religious and political split from the Catholic Church, which ultimately turned into the Roman Catholic Church. In the influence of governments in Europe, it began October 31st, 1517, when Martin Luther, a German monk, nailed his 95 Theses to the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany. So now what I want to do is jump over to here. It's a whole lot on this. I'm just going to hear to this man, John Calvin, who also broke off, I believe. He was a highly influential leader of the Protestant Reformation. He was educated in civil law, right? And Calvin eventually fled Catholic France and moved to Geneva, Switzerland, right? You had the Geneva Bible back in the 1500s. So you had all this around that time, where he instituted many reforms under Calvin's leadership. So you got to understand that with all these reformations and the changes in the writings with the Latin and the Gentiles, that's why it was left up to the elect to figure out taught the deep secrets of the scriptures. Now, anyway, this man, he killed Michael Servetus. He killed him because he was against the Trinity doctrine. I'm not going to read all of it. He was a Spanish theologian who was against the Trinity and said the Most High was separate from the Son. And how could he send himself down here, basically to show himself or something of that nature, which we know. This is why these same guys, what you see happening with Vocab, the camps and the splits, it's nothing new. Everybody's coming back in their lot, and everybody's doing the same thing that they did before. And we can see this behavior continuing until the Lord returns. So as for one Westers, as long as we're in the truth, we're not shooting, we're not killing anybody. To these guys, Vocab and all these Christians, to these guys, our lives of running the streets, being adulterers, being drug dealers and hustlers and everything else means less importance when it comes to what we believe as far as truth and how we will disdain from evilness and wickedness. Now these other groups are going off, you know, and some of them are just rogue and wild as hell. But for the most part, we're defending the gospel, or we're fighting, arguing, contending for the faith without guns and knives and drugs. But see, here's the problem. When we was in the streets and we was in Christianity, there was no reformationists or these vocabs and people coming up trying to change us or get us to convert to Protestantism or whatever. Thank the Most High for that. But there was nobody saying, hey, Jesus' color didn't matter. Nobody wanted to break down Revelation 1. You know, they just kept to John 3:16. Nobody said anything about the Israelites. Why did they keep that out of the doctrine? What was the main reason to keep these people from hearing about the Israelites? If these other people wasn't such a threat, why didn't they mention that they were the Israelites and we were the Gentiles? Why didn't they mention that in these churches? You know why? Because it was told for them not to. Isaiah 54:17, no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness of me, saith the Lord. And this is why 2 Corinthians 2:11 said, we are not ignorant of this accuser's designs. Anyway, that's all I have on that. Shalom.